At Turning Point USA's 2019 Student Action Summit, we sit down with James O'Keefe, founder and president of Project Veritas, and two whistleblowers who came to his organization, Carrie Porch, a former CNN employee who shed light on political bias at CNN, and Eric Cochran, a former software engineer at Pinterest, who exposed how Pinterest censored Christian and pro-life content. James O'Keefe, great to have you back on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You've had a pretty big month coming up to this event.
Yeah, pretty big fall.
Absolutely.
Exposed CNN and the Epstein cover-up, and we just gave a speech here at Turning Point, and a couple thousand people, and we sort of activate them, try to recruit some of them to wear the cameras.
Any interest?
Oh, well, there hasn't been a break in the schedule, so as soon as it, in about whatever it is, half an hour, when everyone filters out, we expect a line of students, and we're going to try to determine which of them are willing to put a little camera on their body and film their dean, or maybe even film their boss at a tech company in San Francisco where they may be interning in the summer.
So this isn't just an opportunity for you to speak and connect with people. You're actually actively recruiting.
Oh, that's the main purpose of why I'm here. It's our raison d'etre of Project Veritas, is to constantly be looking for patriots who are willing to record, and the people who are already on the inside of some of these places. Because undercover work, which is what we do, requires having access to the fraud. And there's two ways to do that. You can investigate and infiltrate, or you can already be on the inside. So last year we had a number of people that we hired from Turning Point. So it's a great place to meet people.
You know, this you had a whole bunch of coverage from CNN about CNN from this whistleblower and so forth. What was the media response to that?
Total ignoring the story. They wouldn't even utter the words. They were careful not to even say my name. I mean, it's like something out of the Leninist playbook. The media does not want to acknowledge me, or unless they are 100% forced to. You have to remember that in the ABC story, the extraordinary thing about it was that CBS colluded with ABC. They worked together to fire who they thought was the source of this expose.
Right.
Media companies colluding to terminate a whistleblower trying to blow the whistle on child pedophilia. So the irony is that, maybe we're beyond irony, we're entering a Kafkaesque nightmare at this point, but the irony is that these are journalists who are supposed to be about the public's right to know. And they're actually suppressing the public's right to know if the implications of the facts being exposed serves purposes that they don't like for political reasons. So this is something that I think most people get, but to hear and see it in not to find out what happened with the Epstein story, but to punish and to target the people that helped make it a reality. And by the way, they fired the wrong person. It wasn't our source.
Right. Do you know what the status of that fired employee is? Still fired?
I think that she, Ashley Bianco is her name, intends to file a wrongful termination lawsuit against CBS News. But this is what I've been saying for years. The media exists to protect powerful interests, the reciprocity of interest, and some of its economics. So Project Veritas is there aren't many organizations. I mean, Epoch Times is great work. I respect you guys. I think you are doing real journalism. I do think your work is not biased in the way that many organizations are, but really, we just want to find the facts. We just focus on the facts and stop with the incessant opining and punditry that we hear. And we believe that image has to be video. No one will believe anything.
So that's really interesting. I remember when we spoke last time, you were telling me everything you do has to be video, because then you have the clear evidence, the indisputable evidence.
Even when we do have the video, they say that it's not real. So when we have text or spoken word, or what most journalists do, like at the New York Times and Washington Post, they have no video. They use anonymously sourced things. I mean, if I were to do that, they would not even pay attention to it. They would not even pay attention to it. So we have to be held to a higher standard. We have to get the tape that's manifestly damning, that causes the righteous indignation, that lights a fire under the butts of the politicians to actually reform the system. Media, Google, Facebook, ABC, CBS, NBC, they own the means of production. And the social media companies are in on it. So like, the public can only know anything unless they're told the thing. They can't, I suppose they could use their intuition. But you learn about most of these things on social media. So we break the story in a tweet, this video of Amy Robach, and things goes wild. It's got 20 million views, 6 million views just on the tweet of the video, 6 million views. And Twitter takes the trend down. Hashtag Epstein
Yeah, I
cover-up.
remember. I saw you tweeting about
Took
that.
it down.
Yeah.
And the wrong spelled Epstein, so many people were talking about it, the wrongly spelled Epstein cover-up, they changed the E and the I around, was trending correctly. So Twitter yanked the real trend down. And how is the public going to respond? I think if the public know about it, but the media is so good at indoctrinating and propagandizing and then putting a veneer. And we talked about this in one of our previous interviews. Unlike the Soviet Union, where people knew that they were being lied to, most of the salt of the earth people, this conference is not indicative of the middle of America, or the independence. Most people just don't understand. They don't realize how fake and how corrupt these organs of propaganda are. So we're hoping to open people's eyes to the facts that Twitter yanks down a trend manually, and they say under oath that they don't do that. Public, if they know about it, I think it would be a big deal.
So, we've been watching impeachment happen kind of in, I guess, in slow motion originally, and then it was in really quick motion. And one of the effects of that has been, it seems like, according to these polls and numerous polls, that the popularity of the president went up. And when I was watching this, juxtaposition, I was thinking, are more and more people realizing that there's a lot of falsehoods?
By the way, polls, I think that's an entity I should investigate.
Okay.
I think we should investigate the polling companies, because I've personally never been polled. No one on my staff has ever been polled. I'm not sure how they come up with these numbers.
Okay.
But
okay.
To your point, it's going to be very interesting in 2020 to see the impact of our work, the impact of your work leading up to the election, because I don't really truly trust a lot of these polls.
No, and I don't either. It's just typically when they go in the opposite of direction of what they should be saying.
I mean,
but you're right. Your point is very good, right?
I think we should. I mean, this is something I'll say on the record.
Yeah.
I think we probably will be investigating the polling companies. Imagine the conversations behind closed doors that happens there. So we'll see. There's so many things to investigate.
Right.
It's a target-rich environment, isn't it? We got big tech, we got elections coming up, so campaign staffers, we have voter fraud, we have, what else? Political corruption.
A lot of people are really worried about voter fraud right now.
And you hear a lot of these, unsourced allegations about buses, but we've never really seen it. You've seen the propensity to commit it. For example, we walk into a poll and get handed a ballot. But what we want to show is people actually tampering with the ballots and actually doing the sorts of things that would lead to criminal prosecution. We got a guy prosecuted in New Hampshire. He voted twice, once in Florida and once in New Hampshire. So these things, if they're happening, we will expose you. So just stay tuned. January, I'm not going to say what it is, but we got some debates coming up, presidential candidates. It's a big year. We want to show people what these people really believe when people are not looking. And by the way, it is not what they're saying publicly.
Fascinating. Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing that. Thanks, James.
Good things. Thank you.
ABC and CBS did not respond to requests for comment on O'Keefe's allegations. Back in November 2019, ABC released the following statement about the alleged Epstein cover-up. At the time, not all of our reporting met our standards to air, but we have never stopped investigating the story. Ever since, we've had a team on this investigation and substantial resources dedicated to it. That work has led to a 2-hour documentary and a 6-part podcast that will air in the new year. Amy Robach, the ABC anchor in the Project Veritas video, said, quote, "As a journalist, as the Epstein story continued to unfold last summer, I was caught in a private moment of frustration." She also said, quote, "We could not obtain sufficient corroborating evidence to meet ABC's editorial standards about her allegations." And also, quote, "In the years since, no one ever told me or the team to stop reporting on Jeffrey Epstein, and we have continued to aggressively pursue this important story." When we asked Twitter about O'Keefe's allegation that the Epstein cover-up trending hashtag was manually deranked, Twitter told the Epoch Times that the Twitter algorithm is programmed to show personalized trends for users. Trends vary based on users' location, and they change as topics of discussion on Twitter evolve.
So, Corey Porch, wonderful to have you on American
Likewise.
Thought Leaders.
Thanks, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here, sir.
I've seen you speaking with James O'Keefe on video, you stepped out to be a whistleblower to expose some pretty astounding things at CNN. Tell me about how this happened.
It happened, I like to say accidentally, like nothing by design, honestly. I came to CNN actually like a registered Democrat. I voted for and campaigned for Bernie in the primary of the 2016 election. Okay. Never Trumper at the time. So me coming to CNN as a contractor was my dream job. Like, cool, I get to go speak truth to power, resist from the inside and do my part, what I thought to, protect the Republic at that time. And it's just within at least 3 or 4 or 6 months, I just saw a lot of things that rubbed me the wrong way. Even as what I considered a far left Democrat at the time, I always wanted to seek out truth, left, right, or center in any argument. And just the stuff I saw about how there was manipulation of like storylines and narrative and the way facts were kind of presented not fully, or like they hid some part of it. And it just really didn't sit well with me. So about a year in, I just noticed I was at CPAC in DC of 2019.
But wait, there's a big distance from being on the far left and being at CPAC.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And we talked a little bit off camera about it, but as I started to kind of see things that really rubbed me the wrong way, I just started seeking out alternative viewpoints from my own, not just what CNN and MSNBC told me to think about people on the center and the right. So I just started going down, YouTube likes to say it, I just started going down a rabbit hole. And as we spoke off camera, Epoch Times, yourself, Larry Elder, a lot of people were part of an ecosystem that on YouTube that really helped give me at least objective information as they could and expose me to differing viewpoints outside of my own echo chamber at the time. So in essence, like yourself, your network, and all the other people in that community of online subscribers and everything else, you guys were pivotal in me opening my mind enough to entertain other viewpoints and eventually switching over. And all that happened literally within the first 6 to 12 months of my employment at CNN.
So there was something about what you were seeing at CNN that really pushed you, right?
Right, it did, and it wasn't any one glaring type of thing. Jan, I always like to say it was just like a grain of rice analogy, like it was just a little bit here, just every little bit on the scale, and then eventually it just tipped. The first thing, and I was telling an interview a while ago, the very first thing that really kind of raised my antenna, so I got there in the summer of 2017. Yeah. And it was just a month or two after that was the Charlottesville Riots, so to speak. Crazy times happening, the poor lady died, like just a crazy show, right? Yeah. And, I was part of that team, boots on the ground, that, put up the dish. We were part of the team that covered that whole thing after the fact. And remember, I'm an anti-never Trumper at the time. I'm like, man, this is awful. It's the end of the world. And I actually remember seeing his speech, what Biden likes to say, the good people on both sides argument, but it's spliced. Yeah. And anybody that takes 45 seconds on a Google search knows that the context that he was saying that in. But I didn't at the time.
Just to clarify,
sure.
I want to make sure we're taking the right thing, right? So, the argument is that the president said that there were good people on both sides, and one side was the
Nazis and the supremacists, and the other side was the protesters and stuff like that. And it just, but he was talking about just the people that were protesting the actual removal of the monuments, not the part of the Nazis and the white supremacists, which he made very clear in his speech, like, hey, these guys I'm condemning. I'm saying the good people that were just there peacefully protesting to, not remove it, against the anti-peaceful protesters that were, violently like doing flamethrowers and everything like that. And from then on, I saw on the TV, CNN, MSNBC, everyone running with he didn't condemn, the Nazis and this, that, and the other, and I know that wasn't the case. So that basically raised my antenna, like, wait a minute, if this is not true, or not completely true, what else am I being fed? And that's what just started leading me. I started noticing more things here and there, where they only covered the shootings from like white people. They just totally disregarded like mass shooters that were shooters of color, like the YouTube shooter and stuff like that. Started totally seeing these different narratives and everything, and it just really led me down a path to research opposing views at the time. And it just got to a point, now we're at CPAC 2019, in February of 2019.
Yeah.
At this time, I'm losing sleep. Like, what I see, what's going on, like, oh my goodness, I'm part of this propaganda machine. I'm a cog in the wheel. Like, I'm now part of everything that I used to say that I hated, like, you know, being against the man or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was sweating, I was losing sleep. My future wife was the same way. She's like, what's going on? Like, this, and this. And she's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do. But I got the call to go cover CPAC, and already I'm kind of red-pilled at this time. So I go to CPAC, see all the people like I'm a fan of, like, you know, you guys, you know, like Rob Smith, you know, like the Charlie Kirk, Crowder, all the people like that. And then I see James O'Keefe. And I've always been a fan of him. Well, not even a fan, but I always respected him. Like, even when he was going after Acorn, you know, my people, you can't argue with tape. So I always respected him. And I saw him go on stage and talk about the Facebook Insider. And the tagline at the end, you know, be brave, do something. I'm like, corny as it is at times, I'm like, you know what, I will be brave, I will do something. And I just went and found him, and that was in February. And we just kind of started, you know, back and forth, the dialogue, because, you know, we didn't know if we could trust each other at the time. We both had a lot to lose. Like, he was scared if I was a CNN plant to get to him, you know, and I'm like, man, I'm about to possibly burn my career. So, but after a few months, we decided to go forward with it, and you know, I went into work wearing cameras and recording things, and about 6 months later, tapes came out, and the rest is history.
So, quick question. Your wife-to-be at the time, she was just on board with you all along?
She's my rock. I mean, I couldn't have done this without her. She obviously wants to remain in the shadows for obvious reasons. I appreciate you asking. Yeah. But it went from, you know, like a normal, like, you know, womanly thing, like, what are you doing? This is stupid. You're gonna get killed, or, you know, get fired. And then as I started explaining to her what I was seeing and what the public needs to just be aware of, she got on board. She's like, yeah, we got to do this. Wow. And the crazy part, Jan, is halfway through this whole saga, we found out we were expecting our first child.
Wow.
We're excited, scared, anxious, everything. And that led us to another, you know, come to Jesus meeting, so to speak, about a week long. Like, do we cut bait and run now that we are expecting a new life? Because these are some dangerous people, possibly. And then after we just decided, no, like, now we have to double down and go forward, because we have to create a future that our future child and other children can at least have a free and fair election. And James and Veritas at the team, they were amazing. You know, they took care of everything. They gave me access to their legal services in case I need it, which was a big fear. Of course. And I mean, yourself and all the other patriots, I mean, we set up a GoFundMe because I knew I was getting fired. And within 36 hours, 3,000 or 4,000 people donated over $100,000 to give us just enough of a cushion to get to our next step in life. And we couldn't have done that with all those pieces lining up. So I like to say it's on accident, but looking back through the whole thing, no matter who or whatever is out there, we think it was all part of a better plan.
It's a remarkable
crazy, right?
story. So 36 hours pass, the tapes come out, disclosure.
It goes nuts, you know, on social media.
Right.
Twitter's suppressing it. They're suppressing the hashtags and trying to bury the story. No one covers it except Fox, Epoch, and all the other alternate, you know, online media, independent media. But the damage is done. You know, one thing I like to always say is I didn't set out to destroy CNN or take anyone down. We wanted one of two things to happen. Either I wanted CNN to own where they're at, like, hey, we're left to center. Cool, whatever, at least we know that. Or to return to their greatness of the 90s and 2000s when, I mean, they're in airports and hotels and everywhere. They used to be the bastion of journalism, and that's all we wanted. Either own where you're at or return to the greatness of impartiality in the Shaw days, where if you turn on CNN and you see the red and white CNN on the bottom, you can pretty much take it as gospel. And that's all we wanted that and other friends in the media to do, is just hear the facts, let people own it, and make up their own mind without some type of spin on it. That was our only goal in doing this.
So what happens? You know, I don't know if it's right in these 36 hours, but what is the, first of all, you know, the CNN response?
the typical denial, and because we released it in four parts.
Did you get called in? How did it?
We knew when it was being released that Monday, October 14th at noon. So like I went into work that day, and they've already been tweeting about it, like, hey, a teaser, it's coming on today. So I got on that morning call where Zucker himself was saying, hey, you probably saw this stuff from Veritas, it's nothing, don't worry about it, even though he's extremely worried in his voice. Just basically telling his people, like, hey, it's no big deal, business as usual, just go on. First tape dropped, it's pretty damning. And the initial response was like, I didn't get any actual journalists in the first video, which was correct. I just got my peers and some engineers and whatnot. But then we started dropping the other videos where I would even get like some journalists, some high-level journalists, like, the senior justice correspondent, Evan Perez. Super guy. Like, I never want to diss anyone at CNN. They're great people. They just are going a different way than the facts and the truth led them to be. And they just basically wanted to do the head in the sand. Hey, if we ignore it enough, it'll go away, just like any media cycle. But it's out there forever now. And the greatest part, Jan, is that just as the Facebook Insider led me to Veritas, in part, the ABC Insider referenced me as their courageous part to come forward for the Epstein story that dropped a few weeks ago. I'm sure you saw that.
Right, of course.
I got that feeling, too, that I did my part to kick the can and pass the football. There are about a dozen or so other people in the pipeline with different stories that James was talking about. This is only the beginning. And that's all we want, is to be able to come forward, wear a camera. If they see some bad stuff, just the public needs to know.
What about your friends and peers? How did that play out?
It was rough. There were, pretty much split down party lines. Half of them love me, half of them hate me. A lot of it was expected, but there were definitely like your inner circle of really good friends, like friends that I've known for over 20 years. That completely turned their back on me and gone tar and feather me online and stuff. And that was hurtful, because I was like, man, we spent 20 years together. We obviously disagree on some things, but you couldn't call me before doing this. But it is what it is. I hate that happened, but I found out who my true friends were. My friend circle is a lot smaller these days, but I'd much rather have the quality over quantity that I have now.
So, but was there anyone who, like you, maybe got tweaked, started thinking about things that you're aware of?
So over my recording days, I've had conversations here and there with people in CNN, and I was able to show them, a variety of little small videos, because you don't want to give someone a 33-minute Ben Shapiro video. As good as it is, you don't want to, hey, here you go. But, a couple clips here, like, of yourself, some interviews, some Larry Elder, some Crowders and stuff. So I was able to kind of at least, I think, tweak the needle a little bit in a handful of people. What may become of that, I don't know. But as you and I both know, one man and woman can make a huge difference even if you don't know it at the time. Like, you had no idea who I was, and vice versa, but now your videos had an impact on me. So we never know what those seeds will happen.
You got this amazing cushion from the fundraiser, which is
very humbling.
Which is wow. And now, so you're in the process of figuring out.
Yeah, our next move. So we moved from D.C. down to Florida. We've obviously to be around a support system for our future child, and just for me to go find different work. I actually work back in corporate America, back in telecom now. I've spent most of my career in telecom in some fashion. Okay. So it's nice to go back and get a real job for a change with benefits where, we have a pregnant lady at the house, and you know how important that can be. So we're just trying to live a normal, low-key life now, normal American dream. And, I come here, love coming to events like this at Turning Point and others, and just kind of sharing what happened to me and hopefully inspiring people to come forward and maybe not in Veritas, but just to be the light and the catalyst for their own thing. If they see some bad stuff at work, throw the whistle, throw the flag. That's all we're trying to do now.
And there's a way through it. Because I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest fear people have, because you know what you have, and the fear of and you do lose some or a big part of it potentially.
But life on the other side is so much better. Like, the stories out there, good, bad, or indifferent. I finally sleep well at night now. I'll probably never work in media again, but if that's the way media is, I'd rather work on the independent side. But James O'Keefe and the Veritas people are the real deal. Like, they took care of everything. They alleviated all my fears. I think I told you, gave me access to their legal services if I need it for, like, the CNN stuff.
Sure.
I mean, the money was great and stuff. I mean, it definitely provided a huge cushion, helped us pay off some bills and set some money aside for the college fund and stuff like that. Just enough to, like, obviously get to where I'm at now. And like I said, I have a job again, and now we can just go live a normal life. And if that hadn't been there, I don't know if I would have done it. That's a very scary, terrifying thing. And that's what we're trying to tell people, is that Veritas and company, they have kind of a template now. Like, I'm like the 6th or 7th insider to come forward or something like that, where, hey, we get the story, we go public, we have the people, like the insiders, set up their own GoFundMe, they push it, we get you some decent money to survive until, like, your next move. I mean, Eric Cochran, the Pinterest insider, super guy, I mean, amazing guy, made a boatload of money as an engineer, and he and Zach Vorhies, the Google guy, decided to walk away from it all because it was the right thing to do. Now he works with Veritas full-time, Zach's a full-time activist, I'm back in corporate America, so there is life on the other side of doing this. It's not the old school whistleblower where you throw the flag and then you're shut off in some cave as a hermit for the rest of your life. There is life outside because you have a support system and an ecosystem around you. That's what we're trying to get out, and no other outlet is doing that now than Veritas. And we're just trying to bring people in the fold because we know there are dozens, possibly hundreds of people in various institutions that see some really bad stuff and are just too afraid to come forward.
And it's really, I think it's particularly important in the sort of era, I guess, of what we've been calling woke culture, of political correctness, where there's this overpowering intellectual orthodoxy that sort of demands allegiance, right?
I mean, Obama said it best himself, it's a circular firing squad. And now even mainstream media is kind of catching up to it, like, this is awful. Like, Twitter is not real life. There's a very small percentage of the population, but they're very loud on Twitter and other social media, and they just want to cancel everybody. It's just, you got to withstand the heat and be on the other side. And people are finally starting to realize that speech is not violence, even though some people try to make it that way. Your feelings are going to get hurt sometimes. Be a grown-up and deal with it and move on. Like, this is not hard stuff. It's just now the culture is finally catching up, I think.
You're an amazing person to speak with. Thanks for being on the show. I haven't had an episode like this, frankly.
It's an honor for me to be here, Jan. Like I said, I'm a huge fan, as I told you. You and your gang, just please keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you never know the impact that you have until it's sitting in your chair. And most of the people were probably impacted the same as I am, but you may never meet in your life. But I promise you, you and your team and all the other independent creators are having an everlasting impact on culture.
Well, thanks so much.
Thanks
Such
so much.
a pleasure to have you.
It's my pleasure, sir.
CNN did not respond to a request for comment.
Eric Cochran, great to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you for having me.
So, Eric, you decided to become a whistleblower, bona fide whistleblower, and you worked with Project Veritas around, Pinterest, some things you didn't like at Pinterest or you didn't think were right at Pinterest. Tell me a little bit about what happened.
So I was a software engineer at Pinterest, and lots of people talk about big tech censorship. They see the outward effects, the anecdotal evidence, and I was on the inside of Pinterest, and I actually had the code, the proof of where they were censoring things like Bible verses and Christian content, and they even went so far as to put liveaction.org, Lila Rose's leading pro-life organization, on a pornography block list, not by accident, via the text that I exposed from within the my former coworkers. Right. They actually didn't want pro-life content out there, but they wouldn't say that publicly. That was all internal. So that was the secret censorship that the public had to know.
So how long were you working for Pinterest?
About 2 years.
2 years. And when in the project, this is software engineer for Pinterest. This is a well-paying job. By any standard, right? When did you realize that something was amiss?
So I actually went to start working at Pinterest because it wasn't Facebook and Google and YouTube. I thought, smaller company, maybe we won't have the same issues. But unfortunately, as we became a bigger company and we went public, we started to fall in line with all of the Silicon Valley thought in anti, free speech thought, honestly. And so it was about the beginning of 2019 that we had more and more of these hate speech, misinformation efforts that were actually just code words for censoring mainstream American views that, again, Pinterest would never want to say publicly.
So, for example, anti-abortion efforts, right? This was, I think you've said, this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. This is what that helped you decide to come forward, right?
I think it really was because, this is, the pro-life movement is really a threat to the status quo right now. We're really seeing an upset to the establishment of the abortion lobby. And, these big tech companies are all part of the establishment. They're trying to protect not lose control of how society is going. And so, as somebody who's very pro-life, I saw, this is a movement that actually is going to change the world. And the only reason, or one of the major reasons the pro-life movement has gained so much traction is their ability to bypass the media gatekeepers on social media. And if we see censorship of the pro-life movement on social media, I hope the ground we've gained is not drying up.
So, but the issue for you is not so much that it's happening, but that it was a secret thing, so that Live Action themselves wouldn't have known, nor would people on Pinterest, that there was this type of censorship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you get your content deranked, you think it's like just some bug, or it's a neutral. They go in front of Congress and they say it's a neutral, algorithm change or something. There's no bias, there's no agenda or anything, but. They don't say publicly in their public policy to users, yeah, by the way, we censor all this content, we derank this content, but that's what they're doing internally.
So when you started, sort of bright and bushy-eyed, wanting to work with this smaller, it's not that small, but smaller tech giant, tech company. And, how, I'm just trying to get into the head of someone like yourself who made that decision. Not a lot of people make those decisions for a lot of good reasons, I suppose. But tell me a little bit about how that progression went for you. Yeah.
Well, it's really a direction in life. It's the mindset that we're more than just individuals, that we are put in a place and time for a reason, for issues bigger than ourselves. And it's the entire idea of being part of a movement, especially, I think this is a very critical time for our nation in both free speech and the anti-abortion movement. And so, I saw this and there really was no choice, because if I didn't say anything, nobody would, and censorship would continue.
What was the response of your peers to this happening?
My peers in big tech, honestly, a lot of people messaged me anonymously and said, even though I don't agree with, I'm not conservative, I'm not even pro-life or anything, but I am a free speech person. What they were doing is wrong. And, even beyond that, we know, I actually have friends who are in tech who are very pro-life. We know there are other pro-lifers in tech, but like you said, it can be scary to blow the whistle. It can be scary to get curious about the censorship that's happening within your own company, for sure.
What about the company? How did the company respond?
So the company sent, they have access logs for all these things. I was an Android developer, a software engineer, so my typical daily duties weren't to access, our censorship blacklist. So they had, access logs. They sent 3 security guards to my desk the day the story released, escorted me out of the building. They actually doubled down, but now in their, they actually publicly said to Live Action, you are medical misinformation and you are banned from the platform. So, at least they had to state their position publicly.
Fascinating. And you don't believe that it's medical misinformation?
It's absolutely not. I challenge them to find anything that's not supported by science, by OBGYNs on liveaction.org's website.
Interesting. So what is next for you?
I actually work full-time at Project Veritas now, working with insiders and whistleblowers and sources around the country, people in very similar situations to me, people inside of government, abortion facilities, media, big tech, you name it, and we're creating an army of whistleblowers. This year we had something about 7 insiders. Next year it's going to be double that.
Well, it's such a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
LiveAction.org remains banned on Pinterest. In response to a request for comment, Pinterest replied with statements published in Vice back in June 2019. They said they banned LiveAction.org, quote, for misinformation, specifically conspiracies and health misinformation. They also stated that LiveAction.org was never actioned or labeled for porn. Instead, the site ended up on a porn block list because the company's internal content moderation tools hadn't been updated. They also said, quote, our technology that enforces some of these policies was named years ago to combat porn, but has expanded to a variety of content despite retaining its original internal name. We are updating our internal labeling to make this more clear.